Welcome to this lecturette on methods of inquiry. In thinking about research questions, you must first consider the framework within which these questions rest. The broadest framework is the research paradigm. A paradigm is a set of assumptions about the nature of reality. It's basically your worldview. There are lots of research paradigms, but the two we're going to focus on are positivism and social constructivism. Positivists think that there's a single objective reality that can be measured. This is how the world is. The facts, basically. They think there are real facts to be proven. Social constructivists basically call BS on this. They think the world is all socially constructed. For instance, this earth here is constructed from paper mache. Social constructivists think that it's all really about your perspective. Where you are looking at it from is the most important aspect of how you view the world. So that's the difference between positivism and social constructivism. There's also a narrower framework to look at research in besides the paradigm, and that's the theory. A theory is a set of interrelated statements intended to explain something. So let's say we're explaining crime. An example of a positivist theory might be biological determinism. So that might be when someone thinks that people are born criminals. In contrast to that, a constructivist theory might be something more along the lines of intersectionality, where society criminalizes marginalized groups. And those are two conflicting perspectives on the same idea. Finally, when you develop a research question, you have to consider the purpose of the research. Do you want to explain something? Do you want to explore something, describe it, or maybe evaluate? So you should take this information into account when you're considering what methods of inquiry are best suited for you to answer your research question. The first picture here shows the specs of a violin, basically how long it is, its depth, the measure of its bridge. Quantitative research focuses on empirical facts and measurable reality. It's basically a positivist view. And so something looking like the specifications is more of that quantitative approach. So quantitative research focuses on quantities, uses statistical tests, and seeks to create generalizable knowledge. Accordingly, quantitative research often uses large samples of participants. Examples of quantitative data include like birth weight, number of referrals that you get at your agency, the exam scores that you get in a course. The second picture here shows a musician's hand on the instrument. You might think about qualitative research as capturing the nuances of sound, the movement of the players, the subtleties that may be better articulated than quantified. Qualitative research focuses on those subjective experiences and interpretations, so it's more constructivist in its slant. Examples include using first-person narratives, participant diaries, or observations of interactions. Qualitative research often seeks to discover or generate theory, and the data is analyzed by looking at patterns and themes. Samples can be a little bit smaller for this type of research because the work is often exploratory. It's important to note that any given method can use either approach. You can quantify observations. For instance, if you're watching two people interact, you could count the number of times they touch one another, or you could describe the tone of the interaction in a more qualitative way. You could say that they were having a warm interaction, for instance. The same goes for questionnaires, interviews, administrative records, and so on. You can put quantitative and qualitative questions in all those different types of data collection methods. Ideally, research incorporates both types of methods, and they both lend particular strengths to our understanding. A final consideration regarding research inquiry is the dimension of time. When we're trying to observe development through age, maturation, or experience, there are two major types of design. Longitudinal studies follow the same group of participants over multiple points in time. Here we show my family from childhood to adulthood, and apparently I went from being this angelic little child to somewhat of a rebel and then perhaps a badass with my sister-in-law there over time. Typically, you wouldn't be looking at just a single family, although you could for longitudinal research. Often longitudinal research will use like a birth cohort, so everyone born during a certain time period and then follow them over time. So for instance, Kathy Whittam looked at maltreated children and non-maltreated children who were all born in the 60s, and then she followed that cohort of people over time to see how their arrests in later decades were associated with their experiences of maltreatment as a child. Cross-sectional studies are another type of design that takes time into consideration. And cross-sectional studies examine different groups at one point in time. So it's commonly described as a snapshot in time across groups. You might look at older children, teens, and adults. Here I have a picture of folks that are all in COVID masks, so you could tell it's all at one point in time in 2020 when there was COVID and masks were needed. Cross-sectional studies aren't limited to looking at developmental aspects. So you could either look at varying age groups at one point in time, or you could look at groups from different locations or different ethnic groups and so on. If you were looking at something like hospital admissions, again, you could examine different age groups and you'd collect all the data at one point in time. But you could make some inferences about age differences based on your findings. So, I'd like you to consider these different types of designs and think about what challenges you face in the work that you do. What challenges do social workers face in the field and in their agencies? And what types of questions might interest you? How might these different research methods that we're talking about elucidate the answers to different types of questions? So that's something I'd like you to reflect upon just a bit. Thank you for joining me on this lecturette.